All right. We are honored to have on the Endless Hustle podcast today three-time world heavyweight champion, the man with no unavenged defeats, the pugilist specialist himself, Mr. Lennox Lewis. Lennox, honored to have you.
Hey, honored to be here. Yes, the pugilist specialist. A lot of people don't know what the pugilist specialist is.
I literally had to look it up this morning, and now I'll know forever. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. Learn something new every day.
Well, educate the people. Tell them.
Hell yeah. All right, Lennox. So I first want to start out with the new documentary, Lennox Lewis, The Untold Story, obviously narrated by Dr. Dre. How did this come about, and how has the reception of it been thus far?
The reception's been great. People are amazed because obviously there's a long history of my boxing history that they didn't know and didn't understand, and it got a chance for them to further look at it and look at the curtain into my life, behind the curtain into my life, and see different aspects of it that they didn't know before. So, there's different documentaries about obviously Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, but the man that is the last undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, they need to know where he's coming from. Obviously humble beginnings, and how my life went. It wasn't a bed of roses.
Lennox, it always feels like when you have a great athlete like yourself, there's that one athletic soulmate that helped change their career. For Michael Jordan, it was Phil Jackson. For Mike Tyson, it was Cus D'Amato. For you, it was Emmanuel Stewart.
Yeah.
Walk me through that type of relationship. What is it about finding that person that elevates you to the next level?
It's great. It's a great feeling because for Emmanuel Stewart, I always wanted Emmanuel Stewart because I remember the North American championships, and he was the American team coach at the time. And I remember talking to him, and he lived close to me. He lived in Detroit. I was up in Canada, and he was about like 3 hours away. But we never got together. Even when I turned pro, he was training other people. So it's like, yo, you can't go after another person's trainer. Although I felt that was a great fit, me and him. And when we finally found each other, obviously he was in McCall's corner when McCall beat me. Right then and there, that's when I realized that's going to be my trainer. And I realized McCall wasn't going to spend too much time with him. He was really up and down emotionally and had a couple of problems. But when we did find each other, just look at me as a radio that you're trying to, listen to, and you want to hear the music clearly. And look at Emmanuel Stewart. He's the man dialing me in and adjusting me and say, you're good. You got great talent. Now let's use those talents to your benefit. And that's what he did. He put everything together, and, me and his relationship where, he can tell it, I can do it. So we had a great relationship that way.
In hearing you speak, you're obviously a very thoughtful, laid-back guy. I never think you were kind of a wild child who got expelled from two different schools for fighting. Can you talk about your upbringing a little bit and how it led you to the sport of boxing?
Part of the reason I started was, I was fighting all the time as a kid. And, a lot of people say, oh, he's a bad kid, he's a bad kid. I wasn't a bad kid. I was just active and always, getting into trouble. I was just very active, and it was great that I found all these different sports to, get my energy out on, and soccer was my first sport. Cricket was my second. When I came to Canada, I learned all these different sports: football, basketball, volleyball. And, I think boxing really helped me because it was an individual sport, really depended on me. That's what I loved about boxing, but I love playing all different sports.
Lennox, we're seeing all of these heavyweight greats come out of retirement and do these exhibitions. We just saw Tyson, looked magnificent, by the way. Any chance that we could see Lennox Lewis back in the ring? Are you challenging any of these guys?
Well, nobody's really challenged me yet. I don't know how I would feel about it. I think it's great watching Mike Tyson and Roy Jones get in there. I'm like, what is Roy Jones doing in there? He's not a heavyweight, And it looked to me that Tyson was really pulling some of his punches. And if I was the ref, I would have given Roy a couple warnings about holding. But I understood that he was actually in there against a stronger man than him. So it was definitely telling down the road. But I liked how Mike Tyson looked.
Are you a fan? Because as a 42-year-old, I'm big into this whole middle-aged thing right now. Are you a fan of seeing people resurging themselves and getting back in the ring in their 50s?
Absolutely. Everybody has in their mind, I wonder what is he still like? Can he still do it? I would love to see him. My son was saying, "Hey, Dad, look, I'm watching two guys that were in your era box on TV. This is great." I'm like, okay, from a kid's point of view, it's great. And from my point of view, I guess it's nice to see. That's how I look at it.
You've obviously faced some greats in your career: Holyfield, Foreman, Tyson, yourself, obviously. If you could create the ultimate boxer from picking aspects from everyone else's style, what would that look like? I was like, what is he doing? Did he
I know,
freeze
again? And then you got it right.
Yeah, that's the best answer that you could possibly give.
Yeah, it actually got me thinking, because in sports, Lennox, we're always comparing eras. I'm a huge basketball nut, and there's always the battle of 90s basketball versus today's basketball. If we took Lennox Lewis and teleported him back to Ali, Frazier, Norton, Foreman in his prime, how do you think you would compete with those guys?
I think he would complete well. I mean, different eras. I hate crossing it. I hate even comparing myself to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is my hero. He's the one that really got me interested in boxing. I used to watch him. I used to love to see the Ali shuffle. I used to love to see what type of antics is he gonna do. What's he gonna say? Is it gonna come true? I loved all that. So when you put me up against him, it's like, yeah, I would do well against him, and he would do well against me.
We had a great conversation with Tony Hawk recently, and he talked about meeting Muhammad Ali and how it really touched him and how much it meant to him. Were you able to meet Ali? And when you did, what was it like?
Oh, it was great meeting. I met him a few times. I met him actually in the world, North American Championships in Minneapolis, and at the racetrack down there. And I remember, somebody said, "Muhammad Ali's gonna be out there watching us." I'm like, yo, everybody was excited, him watching us, and he was definitely waiting for the heavyweights. And I was boxing against a Cuban in the heavyweight finals, and I went out there. I said, "I gotta win. Muhammad Ali's there. I gotta win. I gotta win." So I really roughed up the Cuban, but the politics of the sport allowed me to not win. And I remember coming out meeting Muhammad Ali, and he said, "Hey, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. You won. You won." I'm like, "I know I won. They should have gave it to me." He said, "Don't worry. You're pretty good." So I remember him saying that. That was the first initial meeting. Later on, when I'm doing my boxing, I think I was on the Olympic team or something like that. I met him again. Then I met him again when I was pro, when I was actually the champion. And I remember him whispering to me and saying, "I used to be the greatest. Now you're the greatest." And I said, "No, Muhammad, you're still the greatest." So I remember that moment. That was a telling, special moment to me. The fact that he said that, and I was able to say that back.
Yeah, he said you're the greatest one there is, like me. I remember that. And Foreman also said you were beyond doubt the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Yeah.
Was there a specific compliment or gesture paid to you by one of the greats that you hang your hat on and hold as like the ultimate validation of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think George Foreman gave me a great, what he said about me. Muhammad Ali said a couple of good things about me. Even Mike Tyson, great, said some great things about me. He acknowledged me as as an undisputed champion, and I love Mike Tyson because of that.
There's always been this stigma around English boxers and boxers just in general from that part of the world. Some have been champions like you. Some have been not so great, like Ricky Hatton and a couple others who kind of flamed out. What do you think your influence was for that part of the world, specifically the UK, with the success that you were able to have?
Yeah, a lot of people used to say British fighters are horizontal champions. I'm like, what the hell does that mean, horizontal champions? So I'm like, okay, they're pretty stiff. They're clubbers. What's the clubbers mean? They just stand in front of you and just club each other. I'm like, Okay, well, I'm bringing a different style. I'm bringing my style, the European style, the Lennox Lewis style. My style comes from Muhammad Ali style, other styles that are out there. And now I've developed my own style within that. And I think. And what was the question again?
So how you influenced a lot of
Right.
the English boxers today?
Yeah. So I think I don't know if it's an influence. All I've shown them is my style is a very good style for a champion to box. You have to box. You have to be able to use your jab. You have to not get hit. Defense is very important. So I hope I showed everybody that. So you have to know the art form of this science that we do. The science is not all about defense, it's about offense too. The right offense. You got to start with the right tools. What's the right tools? The jab. What comes after the jab? The right hand. What comes after the right hand? The hook. What comes after that? Body punches. And then you just mix them all up, and it's that butterfly dance in the midst of it.
When you stepped away from the sport and you were, stepped away from the lights, did you find it hard to get fulfillment from other aspects of your life? I mean, I'd have to imagine the rush of being in the ring, heavyweight champ, you just can't get at the supermarket, So was that difficult for you to kind of transition into that more average guy stage of life?
Good question. No, it wasn't really because I think I took a job with HBO as a commentator. So, every time a big fight happened where I would hear the crowd, it was like my mental sense would say, yeah, I remember how that feels, and I would feel the rush in me, So, nobody can see it, but my eyes could tell the rush. It's like, yeah, I remember this. I know the feeling. I know what this fighter's feeling, hearing his crowd boost him up, trying to, while he comes into the ring.
I remember watching Ocean's 11, and obviously you had a really cool cameo in that. When you get to be around some of the great cinematic icons of our time, what's kind of going through you? Like, are you like, holy cow, Julia Roberts over there, Clooney over there, holy shit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually surprised they know me. It's like, I know them because obviously I've been watching them, and then, Elliot Gould might come off the elevator and say, hey, Lennox Lewis. I'm like, Elliot Gould just called my name. Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you guys hear that? You know what I mean? So I kind of turned into a kid too.
I know you're a big chess guy sponsoring a youth chess team. Have you watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix yet?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you think?
I thought it was good. I thought it was great. I actually think it's a great story for families, like, because I want to get my actually daughter, which I'm getting into chess, to watch it. So as a family program, it's good.
Yeah, I was saying it's one of the best shows I've ever seen where nothing really happens. So
Yeah.
I think that's like a compliment in some way.
Yeah, it's like almost like a mental
Right.
mental TV show. It's a mental movie, so you got to be
Slow
mentally
burn.
into it. Yep.
Lennox, at what part of your career did you understand and begin to develop the branding around Lennox Lewis? So, for instance, it became less about boxing, or it had to be even boxing, but also even, hey, I have a business to run, and that business is called Lennox Lewis.
The problem is I was on the business of Lennox Lewis training. A lot of people always wanted me to do different things and get more into, hey, you got to go there, you got to do this, you got to be seen there. I can't be spending the time on that, because at the end of the day, if I lose, you're going to say, oh, well, why did he go to, Ocean's 11, or why did he do this, which happened. It happened. People said, oh, you went to Ocean's 11. It didn't really take anything out of my day or out of my training. It was more just 4 days out of my day. So 4 days I had to really sit, go on the scene, then come back in the dressing room, wait a couple hours, then go back on the set and go back to the dressing room, wait a couple hours. It's like back and forth. I wasn't really used to that, but it was 4 days of that. That's really what people will say.
Was there a point, though, that you have a team around you and they're like, Lennox, we got to do more commercials. Lennox, you got to do Burger King, whatever it is. They're like, we need to get you out of the ring, get to work here.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was. And then there was this black eye around boxers. A lot of these companies didn't want to get involved with fighting sport. It's too violent. What do people think? So there was also that type of barrier as well.
Have you been keeping up with any of this like amateur boxing, the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson? Have you watched that at all?
My son watched it. I watched it for a second. I was really disappointed. I was disappointed with how it turned out. For Nate. It just made me realize that this sport you can never play. You can't play boxing. I've never played boxing. It's a serious sport.
You've obviously had such an incredible career, but you've been knocked out. What is it like when that happens and you've got to come back from that? I always think of that scene in Rocky 3, where Clubber Lang takes him out and he's like, I'm scared, Adrian. Like, what's it like in real life when you have to come back from something like that?
All right. So, and we've seen it in the Errol Spence fight. Look at him. He came back from a horrific accident. And what was the question? Because I asked him, what's the question you hate what people ask you all the time? Oh, do you think, the accident's going to affect you? If you've been knocked out, people are going to be thinking, oh, does he have it? Is he going to be gun shy? It may happen again. You're thinking, why are they thinking this? I feel good. I know I'm going to go in there, but for them telling me this is making me feel weak. It's making me feel there's a possibility that this may happen. So it's like a big jungle of thoughts that are going through your head, and that everybody's thinking, and it's like a big elephant in the room. Is he the right person? Is he the same person? Is he going to overcome what happened to him before? That usually is answered by you. It depends on how you feel. If you're a mentally strong person, which I believe I am, and I said to myself, this ain't going to hold me back. I'm going to go back and I'm going to beat who beat me worse than they beat me. And I did.
When did you know you were done? When was the exact moment where you said, finito, this is a career?
What helped me make that decision, everybody was always saying to me, Muhammad Ali, didn't you think he carried on too long? Didn't you think he carried on too long? And that was always, in my head. For me, when I retire, I don't want to carry on too long. I want to retire when it's right. And I want to retire at the top. So, I said it and I did it.
What was your greatest post-career moment? You've done a lot of cool stuff, including Celebrity Apprentice. Was there a moment that you were just like, this is really freaking cool that I got this opportunity?
There's a lot of different opportunities that I've gone through, from meeting Mandela to being at Muhammad Ali's table with his whole family, with 8 of his daughters. There's so many, but there's a lot. I wish I could go through and you could obviously see some in my documentary. So make sure everybody that knows me, go see my documentary, then come and let's talk about it afterwards.
One last question for you, Lennox. I remember, again, I watched the prime of your career, and it feels like you have become more beloved the further you've gotten away, and your career has become more appreciated. Do you feel that? And when you were in the prime of your career, were you like, man, do they not understand how great what I'm doing is?
I actually understood it from this aspect. I understood, like I told people years ago, I'm like fine wine. What I've done will get better in time. So, people are looking at it right now. They may look at a heavyweight fight. They'll compare it to one of my fights. I'm like, can't be compared. That fight cannot be compared to my fight. These fights cannot be compared. I made it look easy, but it was difficult.
There he is, one of the greatest to ever do it. Go check out Lennox Lewis, The Untold Story. It's long overdue, in my opinion. Lennox, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Bless.
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much,
man.
Lennox. Have a
All
great
right, man.
day.
You too.